well. But first, I want to focus again on the legislative session. Governor Greitens has decided he's going to call up he's going to call a special session for basically right now it looks like for one issue. Now we learned from the people at the Show Me Institute that there may be several special sessions, or they may just make it a rolling special session where they could continue and discuss more than one thing. We're joined right now by former Missouri Senator Jim Lembke, good friend of the show, and of course works for Senator Schaaf from the western side of Missouri these days. But Jim, how are you?
I'm good, Mark. Or at least I thought I was good because the legislature had adjourned for the year, and our liberty is always more intact when the legislature isn't in session. So it looks now like the governor is going to call the legislature back.
Right, and Jim, you're sounding a little low on volume there. I don't know if there's a place you could move to get a better signal. But when the governor called the legislature back, which will happen Monday. Right now, it's only to consider a single bill, correct?
Yes, within the call, Mark, is a bill that would deal with supposedly economic development for a business or two businesses down in the boot hill of the state, one being a aluminum smelter and the other being a steel mill. And what it would do, it would allow for, and this bill actually was introduced during the regular session. It passed the House, and it came over to the Senate, and it was filibustered in the Senate and laid over. And the reason it was filibustered is because what the bill does is it would give these special businesses, these two businesses, a break on their energy costs, their electric costs, and it would allow Ameren to do this and pass on the cost of that onto other ratepayers. So what you actually have is a special law for a special interest that would actually benefit, one business, but then all the other ratepayers would have to pick up the slack.
Would have to pay more, right?
Yeah. Well, exactly. And Senator Schaaf and Senator Romine and Senator Leibla, the three of them filibustered the bill, and it was laid over. So this seems to be, the interesting thing about the governor, calling the General Assembly into special session is that, the word they use for a special session is extraordinary. That's what it actually says in the Constitution.
Okay.
And I would make the point, Mark, that nothing on the governor's list is extraordinary. If we had an emergency, something that would warrant bringing the legislature back in at $140,000 a week, by the way, of taxpayers' money. The governor in his press conference when the regular session ended, he said that it was a historic session, that because of the things that were accomplished, that the conservative movement had a big win. But then in the next sentence, the next breath, he said, but certain career politicians in the legislature that acted like third graders get a grade of incomplete, and we're going to have to be calling them back from their summer vacations, to complete the work. And, very condescending to the legislative branch of government. I believe that the legislature, did their work. And, my experience over the last 16 years, if you don't get to something, you take it up the next January. Or, if something doesn't get done and it's not an emergency, then you do that work over the interim to work on the bill, and then you introduce it again in January.
And they're claiming, the supporters of this, that hundreds of jobs are on the line, correct?
That is their claim. They say up between these two businesses up to 500 jobs. But, I think it's more important to say what is equitable, what is just, for the rest of the ratepayers in the state of Missouri. I would rather see Ameren, which is a private company that's regulated by the state but is guaranteed a return on their investment. I mean, they issued this year, Mark, a $1.76 dividend on their 246 million shares of stock out there, and that shook out to about a 3.5% return for their investors on their investment.
Right.
I'd rather see it come off of Ameren's bottom line. If they want to give a special rate to a business that'll create 500 jobs in Missouri, That would be a good thing for them to do. But why should they pass that rate and increase on to other ratepayers?
We're talking to Jim Lembke. Jim, is there a chance you think that if this bill gets considered and either passed or not passed, that other things will get brought up, like the ethics reform and some other bills that kind of got stalled this year?
Well, I think that there is a chance because I think that the governor hasn't figured out the difference between campaigning and governing.
Okay.
And I think that he believes that you get everything on your agenda because you're a Republican governor with a Republican supermajority in both the Senate and the House. But the fact of the matter is the Senate is designed by our founders with certain rules that, and its purpose is sometimes to stop the tyranny of the majority, to slow things down. So you don't always get everything you want, and you don't always get it in the first year. So I think that the governor needs to learn the difference between campaign mode and governing and being able to work with an equal branch of government.
Right. Jim, you and I have known each other for a long time. And I know that the governor has had his differences this year with Senator Schaaf and some others in Jeff City. But I think when I first met Eric Greitens, you might have been the person that introduced me to him. Has he disappointed you so far as governor, or how would you describe that?
I think that the governor had a very good first year. Again, I think that Governor Greitens can really be a good governor. But I think that he also has to understand that, in his own words, not all politicians are career politicians. They're not all corrupt politicians. And I think that you have to learn how to work with people.
Right.
And how the process works. So I think that, to a certain extent, Governor Greitens has received some bad counsel, from the people he surrounded himself, in Jefferson City. I think that this whole business with this 501c4, attacking sitting legislators, and actually saying things that were untrue about these legislators, it's not healthy for the process. And what I would like to do is convey, what I believe is good counsel to the governor, that you have to learn how to work with other people. And that's the way this process works. And so I still think that Governor Greitens will do good things for Missouri. I think he's moved on some big things this session. But I think he has to understand that you don't always get everything that you want, and you don't always get it on your timetable. And, he's got 3 years left in his first term, and there's a lot to do. And, and that's what the session is for. These extraordinary sessions shouldn't be called lightly. Mark, my real concern is, we saw at the last day of session, the Senate is turning into a smaller version of the House. And leadership ran over the senators on the last day. The chair did not recognize senators, which is the tradition, and they employed a parliamentary procedure called moving the previous question,
right,
and cut off debate. And if you look carved in the granite wall of the Senate chamber, it says that we would always have free and fair debate in the Senate, and that's what sets us apart from the House on the other end of the building. It's run by the rule of 82. If you've got 82 votes, you get what you want. And that's the tyranny of the majority. And so my real concern is we'll get down into these special sessions, and they'll get crazy and use this PQ over and over again.
Well, I was going to ask about that because speaking of the PQ, had they not used it, the minimum wage preemption bill wouldn't have passed, correct?
That's correct. But Mark, that's just a matter of managing your session and managing the time.
Better, okay, all right.
If you take that bill up 2 weeks before the last day of session, and you force the Democrats to truly filibuster it for day in, night and day, then you finally, either they break down, or if you get to the last day, you might employ it on a bill of that kind of magnitude.
Sure, I could see that.
But Mark, I served in the Senate for 4 years. We never once used the filibuster. 4 years, and I believe it was the first 120 years in the history of our state that before it was employed, before the filibuster was employed in the Missouri Senate.
It's an interesting take. And, going back to what you said a minute ago, Jim, because you and I have talked about this past presidential cycle and all, in terms of adjusting a little bit to getting things done, you could have replaced the word Greitens with Trump in a lot of what you just said, and President Trump could probably learn a few of those lessons as well.
Yeah, it's really a kind of a sign of the times, Mark. I mean, I think that people are fed up with government and this idea that, you're an outsider and you're not politics as usual. Well, that goes over real well, in the campaign. But when you actually have to govern, you have to work within the system and how it works. And you just can't say, I'm going to have it my way and nobody else gets a say, because that's just not the way our system is set up. And thank God it's not set up that way. Thank our founders it's not set up that way, because, sooner or later you're going to be on the other side of the equation, and you want to be able to have a way to slow down bad government.
Well said, Jim Lembke. I appreciate your time as always. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Mark.
Yep, we will. We'll talk soon. All right, former Senator Jim Lembke. What he was saying there about Governor Greitens and having to try to work some things out and slow down a little bit, and things are going to happen overnight. I mean, those are growing pains, right? So there's plenty of time for Governor Greitens to recover from those missteps, as Jim might have termed them, and there's obviously plenty of time for the Trump administration to recover from some of these things as well. Washington's been far more partisan for a lot longer than the Missouri legislature. So we'll see what happens on Monday and whether or not that bill gets passed that benefits one plant down in the Boot Heel. This is why I brought it up today, because I wanted you to understand what the issues were there. There are some people that think, hey, it's 300 jobs, let's do it. There are others like Jim Lembke who think you're giving away the farm. Why would you do that for one company and not for everybody else? Because other rates are going to go up. It's a good debate to have. If you have an opinion on it, call your legislator, because they're going to be back in Jeff City on Monday voting on this. 314